Hey guys, Max here, and this is, of course, your daily update for yesterday, the 16th of January. Markets were closed, but a few things did still crop up that are worth talking about, so let's just get right into it. Now, in what was open, the crypto markets, what happened? And the answer is really not a lot. Bitcoin didn't really move, neither did Ethereum, both sitting at about $43,000 and $3,300 respectively. We did see another day of gains for Cardano, which rose 6% on the day again, which is nice to see, but nothing else really moved at all. This is, of course, on the news regarding Sunday Swap, which is quite positive for Cardano, so it's getting a little bit more attention than usual right now. Now, I did actually read an interesting article talking about the decrease in dominance of the crypto market by Bitcoin and how consumers and businesses that actually use cryptocurrency are starting to use Bitcoin less and less, preferring protocols and projects which are actually designed around transactions. Now, I will, of course, link that article down below for anyone interested in reading it. It's also been posted on my Patreon as well for anyone stuck behind a paywall. Now, outside of the market, most of which were not open, what happened? Well, it seems only fitting to start with rising tensions over in Ukraine. Now, over the last 8 years now, there have been lots of cyber attacks against Ukraine, and it's pretty blindingly obvious who is likely the perpetrator. Of course, it's Russia. Now, more recently, there was a very large cyber attack that targeted over 100 websites in Ukraine and shut them all down, and well, this time there is evidence that points to Russia being the culprit once more. On a separate note, Microsoft recently came out and said that they had found destructive malware in systems belonging to Ukrainian government agencies and organizations that work with the authorities. This malware is disguised as ransomware, but when the attacker deems necessary, they would apparently be able to render the infected computer systems completely inoperable. Microsoft is of course working on fixes and preventative measures regarding this kind of stuff, and of course the company itself isn't brave enough to attribute blame one place or another, but once again, the culprit is blindingly obvious. The Biden administration, however, is actually showing some limited strength here and is not allowing Putin to run around with complete immunity. A Biden aide basically said, without actually saying the words, that Russia is behind these cyber attacks. In particular, they said he wouldn't be surprised if that were the case, which, short of literally flinging crap over the border, these are the closest things to fighting words we've seen in a while. Now, the US is still maintaining their current position, that they will aid Ukraine however they can, but this certainly does seem like a situation where the West doesn't actually want to provoke any conflict here, despite what the Putin shills here on the comments will tell you. It's very simple. If the US wanted to provoke the Russians, there would already be 50,000 American troops in the country, but NATO as a whole is showing a lot of restraint and purposely isn't amassing troops at the border, unlike Russia. This very aggressive stance by Russia seems to be taking a toll on even some of the ethnically Russian people living in Ukraine. The city of Mariupol used to admire Russia and saw lots of separatist action, but after 7 years of war that is clearly being instigated by one side, opinions are changing. The simple fact is that life in the separatist areas has been hard for years now, and the people living there have been suffering from poverty due to a devastated economy, not to mention deaths and destruction as well. In early 2015, Russian armed militants shelled the area and killed over 30 people. Once again, I'm going to say to those who are for some reason siding with Russia here, take your crap elsewhere. Ukraine is a sovereign nation and its citizens should be able to live in peace. Guess what? If they want to join NATO as a sovereign nation, if the populace supports that decision, they should be able to do that regardless of what Russians think. If they wanted to join Russia and recreate the USSR, they should be able to do that regardless of what Americans think. The right to self-determination is inalienable. It exists for every community, ethnicity, and populace in the world, and Russia has no trump card over those living in Ukraine. Again, I am not a fan of the current American or British governments. I think I've made that pretty damn clear. There are a myriad of problems over in our own countries as well, and also in other nations around the world that we have caused. But that doesn't mean that Russia should then be allowed to do bad things either. Two wrongs don't make a right and all that, and I'm committed to speaking out against things, events or policies that I see as wrong, no matter where they come from and who those decisions are made by. I do hope at least that regular viewers of the channel can recognize that. Now, of course, there is always some news from China, and today is no different. We've spoken a lot about the struggling economy over there, being hampered by a housing market bear run, falling prices, falling consumer sentiment, and more recently, some pretty harsh lockdowns as a result of the virus picking up over there again. Yesterday, though, the Chinese Communist Party came out and said that they will boost consumption despite these lockdowns. Of course, they didn't say how they were going to do it, just that they would unleash consumption potential during the festive season. This really doesn't mean much of anything unless they announce some real policies, but what this probably is some kind of attempt to make Chinese citizens feel more confident about the state of the economy in order to get them to keep on spending, stop saving their money, and stimulate growth again. What this really shows us is that yes, the CCP does have enormous levels of control over the country and individuals, but they aren't omnipotent. They can't just flick a switch and convince people that everything is okay when it so clearly isn't. They haven't been able to solve the housing problem, and we're now 4 months into that crisis. Authoritarians have the ability to change rules, act with impunity, and target any individual, but it doesn't magically give them mind control powers over the population. Of course, propaganda helps, but it isn't infallible, and people notice tough economic times. Business owners notice, consumers notice, and that's what's happening right now. Now, speaking of China and the collapsing property market, contagion continues to spread, now hitting another very serious, very major property developer, this time one called Country Garden, which is actually the country's largest property developer. Now, we've all heard time after time that Evergrande is the second largest. Well, this is the largest, and trouble is starting to brew for them. The company had been trying to raise new funds, reportedly in advance to make some bond payments due in 2022, but that funding round has apparently failed. They couldn't raise the money they wanted, probably because the industry is just looking so shaky right now, and despite the fact that the company is considered quite safe by Chinese standards, lots of other developers were considered safe as well, and that all turned out just not to be the case. Their dollar-denominated bonds sank to new lows on this news, now trading at less than 70 cents on the dollar, so their value has dropped 30%. This is really not good news, but it was inevitable. I've been saying for months that almost every firm in this industry will find itself in trouble due to this crisis, and Country Garden is no exception. It's of course a huge company with 250,000 direct employees and about 5 million contractors. Now, even in a country as big as China, that's a hell of a lot of jobs that are likely to disappear when the company's crisis really takes shape. So Country Garden is a name we need to remember, though we shouldn't expect it to get to the point of where Evergrande is for 6 months, maybe even a year or longer. Now, in some smaller bits of news, Target is getting ready for fewer trips to their stores as they anticipate people will try to save money on things like gasoline, so they'll do bigger shops but less frequently. They're also expecting customers to buy more unbranded products and eat at home more, cooking their own food as a result of all this inflation, and Target is absolutely right here. This is exactly what happens during inflation. People find ways to save money, they make cuts to their budgets, and they change spending habits and behaviors. This shouldn't be surprising at all. Now, what is surprising is the fact that Walmart is going into the cryptocurrency, NFT, shill, scam game, whatever you want to call it, and that does sound a little bit ridiculous, to be honest. They're moving towards the metaverse in an attempt to make some easy money, as really, that's all the metaverse is. It's a grift to take money away from clueless hype investors who don't understand how the world works. Sadly though, despite the fact that almost all NFTs lose the investors' money, people are still buying them, being deluded by YouTubers or TikTokers who are telling everyone how easy it is to get rich by flipping hyperlinks to JPEGs. I will now probably put a video out in a few weeks regarding the metaverse, all this hype and why it is categorically a bubble, but in short, it's because we are decades away from augmented reality being any good, and virtual reality is in the same boat, and just plastering our faces from a Zoom call onto characters from games which are just better marketed versions of Second Life provides literally no utility. The metaverse already actually exists. It's just companies that you don't think of as the metaverse. Zoom is the metaverse. Monday.com is the metaverse. Skype, Discord, Steam. Any company that allows people to interact with someone digitally is the metaverse, but any company that has metaverse anywhere near their name is either trying to hide something, deceive investors, or just scam less able-minded people out of their money. Now finally, Tesla is never out of the news for too long, and this isn't anything huge, but it does go some way in explaining the culture behind Tesla and the Elon fan club. Basically, the company demanded that a law firm that Tesla works with fire one of their workers after he worked with the SEC probe on Elon a few years ago, and Tesla threatened that they would take their business elsewhere if the lawyer continued to work for them. This is some really petty stuff. No doubt it will be ignored by Elon fanboys, but this is who he is when he's not tweeting memes. It's very easy to get blinded by the cool stuff that Elon does, but far too many people idolize him when on a personal and moral level, he really isn't all that much. Remember all that Thai cave stuff where he got involved just for some attention and then lashed out at someone who actually tried to save lives and helped save lives? Remember when he lied about Tesla making and giving out ventilators to hospitals during the peak of the pandemic purely for good press, when it emerged that Tesla hadn't even done 1% of what they had claimed? You love Tesla? Fine. You love their cars? Fine. You love SpaceX? Even better, no one can hate SpaceX. That company is absolutely awesome, but let's not get it twisted. Elon is no saint. His dating history should tell you that much, and that much should be easy enough to understand. Now this is going to be the last daily update for a few days. I've got a couple other videos that I made in advance that should come out and ensure that you all don't get too bored, so hopefully those are well received. I won't be able to answer any messages or anything really for the next few days, so some patience will be greatly appreciated. Now, if you enjoyed this video, then leave a like and a comment to bless the YouTube algorithm. If you want more content like this, then check out our Patreon and join our community of investors. You get access to our Discord, loads of exclusive content like insight into my portfolio and buy and sell alerts for all my own investments. There's a link in the description to masterworks.io, a site that allows you to buy fractional shares of art from world famous artists like Banksy, which can be a great way to diversify your portfolio with non-market correlated assets. It's completely free to sign up, you don't have to buy anything, you don't have to hand over any card information, so if that sounds interesting, then make sure to check it out. There's also a link in the description to BLOCKFI, which will give you up to $250 in free Bitcoin when you use it. You can also get 9% interest on stablecoins like USDC, which is a far higher rate than you get from any savings account these days. Just make sure not to use Tether. Thank you all for the support, thanks for watching, stay stoic, until next time.